Hello and welcome back to Live with Lighthouse. Thanks to everyone who's tuning in this morning. This is the show where we provide you with the technology and talent solutions to drive your business forward. I'm your host, Joe Ray, and thanks so much for coming back for another episode this Friday. Really excited to be kicking off National Cybersecurity Awareness Month with a special guest. We're going to get into a lot of conversations around cybersecurity requirements for businesses who might want to apply for cyber insurance. It's a big topic that's on the mind of a lot of small and mid-sized businesses this week, and very pleased to have Wiktor from Gallagher joining us on the show this week. Christine, thanks so much for taking the time to join Live with Lighthouse today.
Good morning. I'm happy to be here.
Thanks so much. We're excited you're with us this morning, and thanks to everyone who's tuning in live. And wondering if you could start us off, just tell us a little bit about yourself and the work that you do.
Sure. And thank you so much, Joe, for having me this morning. My name is Wiktor. I am an area vice president for Arthur J. Gallagher. We are commonly known as Gallagher. Gallagher might be a new name to a lot of people here in Western New York. However, it's the third largest broker in the world with offices in over 130 countries. I worked for M&T Insurance Agency starting in 2001, and Gallagher acquired our office on Halloween of last year. Initially, I was
nice.
Yeah, so we're almost a year in. Yes. Initially, I was a little worried, to be honest. I mean, I had heard of Gallagher, but they hadn't been here locally. I didn't know a lot about them. But I'm pleased to report that I'm delighted to be a part of the Gallagher team. They've provided us resources we always wanted as members of the bank. And on top of that, we still have a professional and contractual relationship with M&T Bank.
Excellent.
So while they're not our parent company anymore, I still work really closely with the lenders and the people that I really gotten to know and helped me throughout my career. So it's a win for everybody.
That's great. That's great. And it's, a familiar name, but still that then coming in with Gallagher, that global presence,
right,
really able to increase the offerings there. So one question I always like asking people kind of off the top of the show here, and you might have alluded to it a little bit right there. I always like asking what's the most inspiring part of your work and what you get to do to help businesses.
Helping people, hands down. I mean, it's not glamorous, but everybody needs insurance. And it is a true pleasure of mine to help companies find appropriate risk management solutions to help them in the event of they have a claim. Nobody wants to have an insurance claim, not even an insurance carrier. Nobody wants an insurance claim. However, if they do, I'm one of the first phone calls that they make. And I am happy that there's a plan in place that I can get them set up with an adjuster for be it a fire or a general liability loss. And for the topic that we're talking about today, cyber liability. So cyber liability is still a relatively new insurance product. It is growing year over year as far as how many people are purchasing it. So if there is an incident or a breach, I'm pleased that I can help them find a solution and get them connected with professionals that can help them sort out the issue.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot that goes into being that expert and kind of navigating the market, knowing current events, knowing what trends are coming up, and how businesses can prepare as well. So, great to be in that position, and really excited that you're here to share some of your expertise today. And thanks so much for coming to join us. You mentioned cyber liability insurance is still a little bit newer, and especially some businesses might still be getting to know what is covered, what's not covered, what kind of requirements are needed before you can apply for a policy. Let's just start with maybe just a basic, what is cyber liability insurance, and start from there.
Sure. So cyber liability coverage, maybe when I started in my career, nobody was purchasing it, not in the small to medium-sized business space. There just wasn't a need for anybody. Fast forward about 10 years, several healthcare operations were requiring it because of the personal identifiable information they had on their clients and employees and patients. Now, moving forward, almost everybody needs it. So it's in an evolving marketplace. There is no one standard form for cyber liability. So each insurance carrier has their own proprietary form. So it's important to look at the coverages on each form. But generally speaking, you will have access to first-party claim coverage, third-party claim coverage, and additional crime coverage as well. So examples of the first-party coverage would be the cost of business income if your system is compromised, cleaning up your system to scrub the information to get you back to where you were. Third-party would be paying out any demands that you have to pay, defense costs. And then the crime coverage is really important coverage, and these are many times sublimated. And these are the funds transfer fraud, the computer fraud, the phishing coverage. So that's when some funds have been moved without your permission. Somebody was tricked into it, be either a financial institution or an unknowing employee. So those are the really important coverages to make sure that you have.
Excellent. And there's a lot to cover in there too. It definitely good for businesses to know that they have resources out there to learn more just about the different, types of coverage, different things that they need to be considering when they're applying for a policy and things like that. And you mentioned in there a little bit too, especially for the small and mid-sized businesses, Christine, that it's still newer to that industry.
Mhm.
Is there when you're talking with small mid-sized business leaders, is there still any sort of a stigma that maybe cyber attackers and cyber crimes and things like that are still more focused on large businesses, and maybe they're still kind of becoming aware of how they might be targeted?
Yes.
Yeah.
So, and they, several years ago, they were right. They really were not a target. However, now everybody is a target. It really doesn't matter what your mission is. These threat actors are simply looking for vulnerabilities. And as soon as they find one, they are going to attack. Smaller to mid-sized businesses are probably more prone to the phishing attacks, where somebody will send an email and they trick somebody into sending money to a vendor that they think is legitimate, but it's not. So everybody at this point is vulnerable for attacks. Small to mid-sized businesses might have been priced out of purchasing liability insurance in the past couple of years. However, I'm pleased to report that the market has leveled out a bit, so it's more cost effective. And on top of that, it's a wise investment in your company to transfer this risk because, as I mentioned, everybody has the risk. It doesn't matter your size.
Yeah, and definitely there's increased opportunities. And another thing I wanted to ask you too, I imagine throughout kind of COVID times when people were working remotely more, it was kind of very just panicked, like lots of people needing to change the way they worked very quickly. I
Mhm.
imagine that created a lot of opportunities for cyber attackers to, take advantage of vulnerabilities, and that might have led to some of the price increases, I imagine.
Oh, absolutely. As soon as all those corporate laptops went to dining rooms across the globe, a lot of companies were just truly not prepared and they did not have the protocol in place to protect their businesses. And there was less controls as people were just working from home. So, yeah, oh, that was a heyday for cyber criminals.
Mhm. Mhm. And it's, like you said too, now I think businesses are becoming more aware of this hybrid remote work environment depending on their setups.
Mhm.
I imagine a lot of them are starting to find more of the tools and processes and whatnot to be able to enable their employees to work safely and reduce those
Correct.
vulnerabilities and whatnot.
Mhm.
For people who might still be learning a little bit more about this, what are some of those tools, and what are kind of the things they need to be investing in, to really set up that first standard of care for cybersecurity?
Sure. So the first one is absolutely multi-factor authentication. If you do not have MFA, you can get cyber liability insurance, but it's going to be expensive and you're not going to have many options. We're all using MFA these days. That's when you log into your banking account, you type in your password, then they then send you a code that you have to type in to authenticate yourself. So it's not a new concept to us anymore. And it's really important, insurance aside, from stopping a threat actor to obtaining access to your system in the first place. So that's just doing good business.
Mhm.
So on top of that, I would recommend regular patching. I would recommend regular backups. I would recommend endpoint detection and response systems, and removing any end of life systems that you might have in your system as well. We don't want to give the threat actors any opportunity to access your system.
Mhm. And all those tools work together, I imagine, too, to really create a
Absolutely,
comprehensive system of security for the employees, and then also kind of the ongoing monitoring as well.
absolutely.
Mhm. One thing also that kind of came up in my research as well, and kind of might be an interesting point to touch on, when we think about cyber attackers exploiting a vulnerability, I think there
Hmm.
might also be a lot of, just imagining that it's a very like smash and grab, like go right in, get whatever they can, lock everything down.
Hmm.
Is there any threat of somebody, exploiting vulnerability and then just kind of collecting data over time as well too, and not necessarily making their presence known? I guess A, how prevalent are those types of threats, and B, how important is that proactive monitoring over time for businesses to continually be looking for vulnerabilities and things like that?
Absolutely. So a threat actor could gain access to somebody's system and sit there for months before they act on anything. And then during that time, they are working through the network, trying to find areas that they think they can exploit. So you don't know when they truly gained access to your system. So that's why it's important to have these preventative measures in place to stop it from happening, or if something is detected, to take corrective actions.
Mhm. Excellent. And then thinking about it, from the, hopefully nothing does happen, but in the event that something does happen, you mentioned first party, you mentioned
Mhm,
third party, you
mhm,
mentioned, the actual damages from a claim and things like that too.
mhm.
What are the things that are going to be required from the cyber insurance standpoint in order for a business to apply and get approved from a claim? We mentioned some of those tools right there.
Mhm.
Um, what other factors go into, really setting up that cyber insurance policy first?
So there are extensive applications that the client is going to need to complete. Years ago, it was a one pager. They primarily were focused on the number of record counts that you had. Now they're asking for all those things. They're asking about MFA, endpoint detection, backups. And I strongly urge customers to take the application seriously because if they have a claim and it turns out that they did not have MFA and they indicated that they did, the insurance carrier has every right to deny that claim. And that
Mhm,
has happened. So involve most small and mid-sized businesses won't have a CISO on staff, but involve your internal or external IT support team because the applications are incredibly important in obtaining insurance and maintaining the standards that you set on that application.
mhm. It's definitely important to like you said there, have somebody who has that expertise to be looking at those systems as well too. Thinking about having people come in and look at these systems as well, but also just,
Mhm.
making sure that everything's covered as well. I
Right.
know, I know we're covering a lot really quickly too. So wanted
Yes.
to remind all our viewers live on LinkedIn too. The comments are open. If you have any questions for Christine as well, feel free to chime in, and we can bring your questions on show as well here. So thanks to everyone who's watching live. Thinking about the cyber insurance market, Christine, I know we talked about that a little bit earlier. You talked about prices increasing and then maybe decreasing a little bit too. What are some ways that businesses who might want to reduce their costs, how are ways that they can lower their premiums and make cyber insurance something that, isn't necessarily going to be seen as a burden?
Well, as I mentioned, the pricing has come down, and over the past couple of years, the insurance carriers were increasing pricing, capacity was cut, and part of that is because obviously there's been significant claim activity. But initially, when cyber carriers were trying to come up with premiums, there was no actuarial data that told them, okay, this should be our premium, and this is why. So underwriters were truly using their best guess of what premium they think they needed for the exposure. So at this point, I think the premiums have more validity as far as claims data and what the carriers need. And if insureds are using some of the things that I had mentioned, the MFA, the endpoint detection, the backups, that's going to position them in a much better light with insurance carriers to get preferred terms.
Mhm. It's going to help to be able to show that as well. And then obviously those are going to be investments that go into those types of tools and things like that.
Mhm.
Just from your work and just kind of experience as well. Do you have any sort of assessment compared to, what costs might be for, generally speaking, a cost for cyber insurance compared to what the cost might be of a cyber attack? And, if a business did, yeah.
Yes, it's going to be say, and I'm just picking a number, but say the premium is $6,000,
Hmm.
and then all of a sudden you are hit with $1 million ransom extortion threat. That $6,000 is going to be the best money that your company has ever spent. If you don't mind, I'll just touch on ransomware quickly
Sure.
because
Yeah.
it's a huge issue. I mean, it happened in Las Vegas not long ago. We saw it with two high-profile ransomware attacks. The claims actually slowed down at the end of last year and the beginning of
Okay.
this year, but it's picking back up.
Hmm.
And the demands are significantly more than they were.
Okay.
Uh, I would say 5 years ago, the demand, like a typical demand, would have been maybe $150,000. Now we're
Hmm.
talking about a million plus in demands to release your system back. And on top of paying the demand, if you choose to do so, there's other insuring agreements that would be triggered, that business income, the getting your data, the PR,
Hmm.
notification costs. So the claim can be really expensive really quickly. So again, whatever premium that you ended up paying, worth every single penny.
Absolutely, absolutely. And actually, we do have a viewer tuning in here with a question for us that we'll bring up here. Actually, thanks to Al Bazorgi, who was our guest on Live with Lighthouse last week. Runs a business called Twipes that's manufactures biodegradable wet wipes. And
Mhm.
thanks, Al, for tuning into our conversation on cyber insurance here. And Al wants to ask Christine, does working with a broker or middleman affect how claims pay out?
It should help you because you have an additional advocate. Generally speaking, I'm not aware of many cyber insurance carriers that go direct to consumer. Generally, you would work with a broker, somebody like me or any of our notable competitors in town and around the globe. So it is advantageous because the broker not only would be your advocate in the claims, but they're also going to be the one shopping for the coverage for you. I think there's about 300 carriers that are writing cyber liability insurance now. So there's an awful lot of options. Obviously, they're not all here locally, but that's our job to find the best solution for you at the best premium with the most coverages available in the marketplace at that time. And then if there is a claim, yeah, then it's our job to make sure that it's moving forward with the adjuster.
Perfect, perfect. And again, like we talked to, it pays to find a partner who's gonna be able to bring that expertise, help make that process
Correct.
seamless. So
Mhm.
absolutely. Thanks, Al, for tuning in, and thanks for bringing that question
Yes,
to
thanks
us.
for the question.
That's the beauty of live and being able to help people right here. So thanks so much, Christine. We talked a lot about cyber insurance and what it covers. Is there cyber coverage on general liability policies? So like if a business is generally setting up their insurance policies,
Mhm.
is anything cybersecurity wise covered there, as opposed to a specific cyber liability insurance plan?
Sometimes, but not a whole lot of coverage. So a lot of insurance carriers are adding ancillary coverages. They're naming them their cyber suite or some other clever similar name. So that will give you just a little bit of normally like computer fraud coverage, maybe some extortion coverage. The limits typically range from about, I would say, 25,000 to maybe 300,000. So the limits are significantly less than you would find on a true cyber policy, and it's not going to give you everything that you need. I rarely see business income coverage, and
Mhm.
if there is some kind of an attack, you're likely gonna be down, and you're gonna be losing income because you're gonna be focused on getting your system up and running again. So that coverage is not available. So, it's for some companies, if they truly are incredibly small and they feel that they wanna absorb the risk, that might be a right option for them. For most companies, I strongly suggest purchasing a standalone true cyber policy.
Mhm. And that's a great point and kind of plays into what we were saying too of the being a cyber liability insurance provider and being able to have the whole context of the different types of costs that need to be covered in the event of something like that.
Mhm,
Is definitely something that people need to be considering as well. So,
mhm.
so thank you for covering that too. Looking at really the whole state of cyber insurance here, what's covered in a claim, what small businesses can be doing to, best set themselves up to protect themselves. Is there anything else we haven't covered yet, Christine, that you think would be valuable for viewers to know?
I think I touched on this, but really take that application seriously. Make sure that you're looking at the questions, and we sometimes will give you feedback. Sometimes insurance is responsible for societal changes because companies cannot even buy coverage or affordable coverage if they don't do what an underwriter says that they need to do. So that happened a lot with MFA because, as I mentioned, companies, it's really difficult to find coverage for cyber liability risks if you don't have MFA. So
Hmm.
take those applications seriously. And if there's something that somebody like me comes back and says, "Hey, you don't have endpoint detection and response systems," I would recommend take it seriously because again, the reason that we're doing this is to prevent you from having a claim in the first place. So insurance isn't enough. It's transferring your risk, but there's always risk out there, and there's always going to be uninsurable risk. I don't care what insurance product you purchase, property, liability, or cyber. There's always some kind of risk that's not insured.
There is, and you touched on a little bit in there too. Actually, the societal changes and stuff that might impact costs and things like that too. On our first episode of Live with Lighthouse, actually, we had Jessica Copeland on from Bond Shonick and King, and we were
Mhm,
talking about AI a little bit and some of those
mhm,
effects on cybersecurity and cyber insurance as well.
mhm.
Have you seen anything kind of in that area or any other just kind of broader trends that have affected cyber threats to businesses and cyber insurance as well?
So AI is everyone's going to tell you used can be good or it can be terrible. So used for good, insurance carriers are using AI. It's helped get rid of human error as far as claims. I see that a lot with property claims. I know we're not talking about that, but the companies are using AI for the good. On the flip side, those threat actors are also using AI. They're
Mhm.
far more sophisticated in their phishing attempts. They're far more sophisticated in spoofing somebody on a telephone. So that can be detrimental. I'm not seeing those questions asked on renewal applications yet, but I suspect that that will be forthcoming. I don't know if there'll be limitations on coverage. That will be yet to be seen.
Mhm. So something to look ahead to for 2024, and everybody's planning ahead for the new year now. So something that we'll keep an eye on for sure.
Mhm.
Thanks for sharing that. Really appreciate you joining us, Christine. I think people are going to be able to take a lot of knowledge away from this episode. There's one question that we always kind of wrap up with as we come to the end of Live with Lighthouse here. The show started in the spirit of something that we say called Be a Lighthouse, which is all about helping people, guiding them to the solutions they need. And you've definitely done that right here with this episode. So I always like to give our guests the opportunity, and we'll give you the opportunity as well, to give a shout out to someone who's supported you lately or helped you learn something new.
I love that you asked this question because it gives me the opportunity to publicly thank a colleague, Marie Burrell. Marie has been part of our office for a long, long, long time. She moved to compliance when she was at the bank for part of the insurance agency. And then once we were acquired by Gallagher, she wasn't sure what her role would look like because compliance was a centralized function. She's now in sales enablement. And I can't tell you how thankful I am for everything she's done for me. I have actually been on the road the past couple of weeks with Jessica and a couple cyber panels. And Marie was really incredibly helpful with logistics, getting our promotional materials, and just helping all of us salespeople in general do good things to help our customers. So thank you for asking, because I'm pleased to give a shout out to Marie.
I always love the shout out to the marketers and the salespeople and everybody who helps out with enablement and all those little things that go make a big difference too. So shout out.
It does, yes. We can't do it all. So I'm really thankful for Marie.
Love it. Awesome. Christine, this has been a great chat. Thank you so much for joining us. Thanks to everyone who tuned in for Live with Lighthouse here. And, for everybody who's either live or watching this recorded, Christine, what's the best way for people to connect with you and learn more about what Gallagher can provide cyber insurance wise?
I'm on LinkedIn if you want to connect with me there, or you're also welcome to reach out to me. My number is 716-553-3028.
Excellent. Awesome. Thanks so much for joining us today, Christine. Really enjoyed our discussion. Thanks to everyone who tuned in, and look forward to coming back with Live with Lighthouse next week.
Thanks, Joe.
Thanks, everyone.
Go Bills.
Go Bills.